It all started in 1985. I was a linguist living in a non-English speaking country with 3 young children. My oldest, my daughter, was 4 years old, and I said, well, she's 4 now, it's about time she learnt music. And I looked for a music teacher and I found something called the Suzuki Method. I took my daughter to learn the Suzuki Method. I'll be talking about that a little later. But in very short, this method taught children how to hear the music, not to read the notes. And Dr. Suzuki called that the language of music. They would hear the music and they'd learn to play it according to hearing. So even 2-year-olds were playing the violin. Very inspiring technique. And as Dr. Suzuki called it, the language of music, I said to myself, this is very interesting. We're teaching music with a mother tongue method. But why aren't we teaching language with a mother tongue method? Now, I'd lived in various countries in the world, and I taught English in various countries in the world, mostly at university level. But I'd never actually realized that there was a problem, that people were trying at an early age to learn language with reading, writing and speaking together. Now, speaking and understanding are very different skills to reading and writing. So for young children it made very little sense to learn language through reading and writing. So I started by thinking about how we could create a methodology of teaching very young children language. Now, my studies at university had taught me about how children learn their mother tongue. It's very simple. When a baby says, "Mama," Mama jumps with delight. And baby thinks, "Oh, I did that very well. I'll say it again." Mama doesn't say, "Okay, that's good, now say Dada." Mummy says, "Wow," and baby says Mummy another 1,000 times before he says something else. Because baby got reinforcement, positive reinforcement. So I said, well, that's how we are going to teach our young children how to do it. So in 1985, I started making cassettes. In those days they were called cassettes, homemade, in which I plonked on the piano and sang. I told stories, read poems, and these children that I was teaching, small groups of 1 to 6-year-olds. I only wanted the 1 to 6-year-olds. I wouldn't even take the 7-year-olds. I wanted to show that very young children could learn a foreign language easily. So these very young children would receive these cassettes, which they were to hear twice daily in the background at home. In the background, that means while they're eating, playing, washing, going to bed, not focusing on them. So the sound would go into their heads, into their brains peripherally, without them realizing, without them knowing, without them understanding. And they would come once a week to a lesson with me, and they'd know the songs, they'd know the stories, they'd know the sounds, but they didn't know what they meant. My job was to teach them the meaning in English through games and activities. I'd been doing this for about 1.5 years. When parents would come to me and say, "Please take my 7-year-old, please take my 9-year-old, please take my 12-year-old," and I'd say, "Whoa, stop. Why would your 12-year-old come and learn with me? Your 12-year-old's learning English in school." And they say, "Because the 6-year-old knows more than him." And then I understood there was a very big demand for this, very big demand. And then people asked me to come and teach 200 kilometers away, 300 kilometers away. The name was out there. People were excited by this. But I said, I can't do it. I have too many home commitments. I'm teaching. I've got young kids. I'm not going to travel the country teaching. And then I realized, yes, there was a demand, a national demand and probably an international demand for teaching young children English. And moreover, I'd actually started to look into elements of early child development, and I realized how much an additional language was actually developing these very young children's brains.